Great to be with you and great to be with all the attendees on this webinar. I'm really looking forward to this discussion and sharing some of the insights that we have gained around the top talent investments that you can invest in to improve your company performance. Thanks for that kind introduction. This is my family. We have a lot of blondies. My wife and I love our lives with our 5 children and our little dog, Reggie. And if you ever come out to Utah, we'd love to connect with you. Just a really high-level view of what Emmersion is. I joined Emmersion about 9 months ago because I believed in the mission. I believed that AI could be a pathway to help connect people with life-changing jobs and educational opportunities through their language skills. And that's what we do, is we certify language ability through a very quick, automated, fully adaptive language assessment. And we can test for speaking, for writing, for grammar across multiple languages. It's all real time and can really drive amazing results when you extend this assessment to potential candidates and test for language ability at the beginning of the hiring process. So let's jump into this this topic around most impactful talent investments. One of my friends, Norm Smallwood, who's the co-founder of RBL Group, which is a top consulting firm in the world, he did a recent study of about 1,700 companies worldwide, and he was asking this question of what are the talent pathways that most impact company performance? There's so many different ways as HR leaders that we can make investments. We can invest in employee development. We can invest in employee experience, in acquiring talent, retaining talent, career development, career pathways. You know, all of these different pathways that he identified. And the question in his mind was, which of those investments makes the biggest impact in company and employee performance? So I'm actually interested in getting your opinion on this question. So we're going to do our first poll, and I'm going to have you respond to this question. Which of those 10 pathways do you think is most impactful on overall company performance? And we'll go to that first poll now. Interesting, we're only getting 4 different votes so far. For developing, creating a positive employee experience, communicating, encouraging DEI. Maybe like 20 more seconds for the voting. We'll wrap this up. So interestingly, developing employees, now we're starting to get still some votes coming in, which is fine. Developing employees came in as the top result. Certainly a meaningful way to impact company experience. I want to show you the actual results of this survey of 1,700 worldwide companies, and then we'll talk about it. I've ranked these in order of how the actual survey data came through. The number one most impactful way to improve company performance from a talent perspective was acquiring the right talent. You know, it reminds me of Jim Collins and his great work in the book Good to Great. The foremost thing that you need to solve for first is getting the right people on the bus. And certainly in my career, this has been true, that getting the right people with the right skills seems to impact the trajectory of the company more quickly and more long-term than any other thing that I, as a people leader, can focus on. Interesting that the second one is communicating with employees. I think we saw this really clearly over the past year and a half with this worldwide pandemic, that the companies that got ahead of the communication and they were transparent and the communication made sense and it was ongoing, that that really impacted the ability of the employees to perform better. And then you can read on through, how the rest of these talent pathways ranked, from managing employee performance, fourth, employee experience, developing employees. So the ongoing learning and training was number 5. And even when you go down to number 10, just because DE&I was lowest on the ranking of what impacts company performance, we all know how important diversity and inclusion is for our employees and for the long-term performance of the company. So I'm not saying that the ones at the end shouldn't be focused on, but if we're looking to make the biggest impacts, we'll focus on the ones at the top. Just one more view of this data, which I think is an interesting slice, is when you break the impact down by different categories. One category would be employee results. These might be employee NPS, employee retention, the different employee measurements. Again, far and away, acquiring the right talent makes the biggest impact on those employee measures. From the financial perspective of the company, again, this one's a little bit closer, but acquiring talent is number 1. And then when you look at customer results, customer NPS, customer retention, net expansion, things like that, the people you have on the team and the way that you communicate with them, they account for almost 50% of the impact on company performance. So we could spend an hour going through each of those 10 different talent pathways and talking about things that we could do to drive better performance through that talent pathway. But to be effective, I just want to focus on this number 1 investment that we could make, which is acquiring talent, and go a little bit deeper on that and see if we can come up with some discoveries that we can take away that will be meaningful for our companies. I'd like you to just consider this question. If acquiring the right talent is the most impactful investment we can make, then what are the top skills that you're looking for in the people that you're bringing into your company? And I'm sure it depends on the role, and it depends on the stage of your company, but focusing on the skills is critical to finding the right talent. Last year, Indeed and Cisco surveyed 1,000 different companies, and they were looking for, what are the top skills that impact performance across the organization. And interestingly, on the soft skills side, communication was number 1. It was the most important skill to be effective for the people that I hired. And problem solving, critical thinking. It's interesting that several of the other soft skills like teamwork and organization, emotional intelligence, it also ties back into communication. Someone's communication skills are critical from a soft skills perspective. And when you look at the hard skills, there are some themes around communication and language that are also really important. Number 3 is writing. Number 4 is foreign languages. And then you get into some of the other hard skills. But in my experience, this data holds true, that someone's ability to communicate and speak and write and persuade is one of the most important skills that I look for in the people that we're hiring. So now diving down again, we could focus on any one of these soft skills and hard skills, but I just want to take you through my framework of how this data might be applied, and particularly in the realm of communication, how we could take the soft skill and the hard skill of communication and writing and figure out ways to bring in better talent into the organization by focusing on those skills. So just one more question. If communication and writing and language skills are so important in overall talent, how can you effectively test for these skills in the hiring process? One of the things that I've learned in hiring, hundreds, if not thousands of employees, is that the best hiring practices have a testing framework. We can learn a lot from our friends on the engineering side of the business. I think they do it better than probably any other team in our organizations. Is most of the engineering teams that I've worked with, they have a testing framework. If they're trying to hire a software engineer who's going to be writing code, in the interview process, they have that candidate write code to actually test. And it's critical to see, someone's ability before we hire them. In other areas of the business, we haven't done so well at actually testing the skills that we want to hire for. So how do you test for communication? What are your tools? What are the questions? What are the processes that you use to test for communication? One of the challenges with testing for language and communication skills is the problem with human rating. Most of us think that we're pretty good interviewers. We think that we're not biased, but we actually introduce all kinds of issues into our hiring practice when we focus just on human raters. First of all, it's time consuming. If we need to interview 10 or 15 or 20 candidates, a human has to be involved in the screening and the interview and all through that process. It's inconsistent. You all have had the experience that I've had where you may have a panel spread over a couple days of 3 or 4 interviewers, but if there's conflicts, you may not get the same panel members taking part in every interview. It's expensive, it's not scalable, and it's very subjective. There's so much interesting research that's come out of late on how bias is introduced into our hiring practices. And again, if our motive is to invest in the right talent because that will impact company performance, we need to do everything that we can to eliminate the bias, because that bias will lead us to make worse decisions. So with all this in mind, I want to do an activity with you, and we're going to see the potential impact of human bias when it comes to rating communication and language skills. So I'm going to invite everyone to participate who would like to. What we're going to do is watch a short 1-minute video, and the video is going to be of a English as a second language candidate who will be introducing themselves in English, and we're going to have everyone rate the language ability from a scale of 1 to 10. We're going to type the answer. Sorry, we should have updated the slide. You're not going to type the answer in the chat box. We're actually going to do another poll. So this first candidate is Juna. And again, you're going to listen to her, and at the end of the dialogue, you'll have a chance to rate her fluency in English from a scale of 1 to 10. So here's Juna. Please listen in.
Mabuhay! Hello everyone, my name is Juna Magno and I am from the Philippines. I grew up in Ligao City, Albay, which is not far away from the perfect cone volcano called Mayon Volcano. It is very beautiful and very active. English is actually my third language because back home I learned our dialect, which is what we normally speak at home, which is called Ligawenyo. And then we are also taught Tagalog, which is our national language. And of course, when you start going to school, you have to learn English because all the books that we have from math, science, and other classes that we take are all in English. So I learned English back home in the Philippines, and I'm still practicing. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. And that's all I can share for you today. And mabuhay!
Juna is delightful. So let's go to the poll, and please participate. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you score Juna's language proficiency? 10 would be fluent, 1 would not be fluent. Okay, the votes are coming in. We'll give everyone maybe 10 or 15 more seconds to get their votes in. So overall, the scoring is high. 10 and 9 are the most popular scores. 24% scoring at an 8. 6 per, it looks like 1 vote for a 6. There's definitely some variability. It's clear from this group that her language ability is strong, but you can even see some people have differing opinions of how strong and how fluent her language ability is. So let's look at the actual results. When you take her through an actual independent third-party assessment through Emmersion, the results look like this. She scored a True North score, which is the certified language ability score of a 9.2. If you compare that to the CFR scale, she'd be in between a C1 and a C2. If some of the people on this webinar were interviewing her and rating her language ability, they would have viewed her ability as too high and others as significantly too low. And that has business impact. If an interviewer views the language ability as too low, then you could potentially pass on a candidate who would be a fantastic contributor. And if you score it as too high, you potentially get the company into trouble. In call centers where that's a space that we spend a lot of time in. If you put a candidate, a new hire, on an account based on their language ability and they're not able to perform at that skill level, it can impact customer retention scores and CSAT scores. It can even go as far as impacting the revenue that you would get through that customer. So this is a skill that's super important to get right and tough to judge. Let's try another one. So I'm going to have you listen to Charles and go through the same rating process. So listen to Charles's English and let's rate it.
Hey everyone, my name is Charles and I'm from Bohol, Philippines. I learned how to speak English as my second language way back in elementary school. Aside from English and my primary language, which is Tagalog and Cebuano, I am also familiar with Japanese. And right now, I currently work as a software engineer contractor for Emmersion, and I find that my English capability helps me a lot to communicate and collaborate better with my teammates in identifying and creating solutions that provide the most value to our customers. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the poll on Charles and let's have people rate his language ability. Again, the information to participate in the poll is there at the top. Thanks for those who are voting and participating. There's no wrong answer here. And again, as we're going through this exercise talking about language ability or communication skills, I hope that the message that's coming across is that in our talent acquisition approaches, what are we doing to decrease the variability of how we're scoring candidates? And having objective data is so critical in that process, so that we're not just leaning on human rating skills. Interesting with Charles, there's even more variability than there was with Juna. So let's look at the actual scores. Thank you so much for your votes and for participating there. Here are Charles's scores, slightly lower than Juna, 8.0 on True North, which correlates to a B2 or C1. Interesting that some people on that example probably rated him higher, and some people rated him significantly lower, when in fact he was quite close to Juna's language ability. We're going to do just one more of these. I think these are interesting. So this is Shashank. We'll listen to Shashank's language skills. Here he goes.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Shashank and I work as a designer in Utah, United States. I was born and brought up in New Delhi, India, and my native language is Hindi. I started learning and using English from primary school. Although I lived in a joint family during my early years, I shifted to a separate house later on, and I have one older brother. I've always been interested in art and design, and that led me to pursue architecture during my undergrad years. But I worked as an architect for 2 years before pursuing a master's degree from UT Austin, and then finally switching to product design. Few of my interests are, first, is music, and I played drums during my undergrad years, and I was part of a band. Second is food, especially cooking and experimenting with different cuisines. I love having parties where I invite friends over and having them test my latest culinary experiment, whether they like it or not. And the third would be outdoor sports and hiking. And this is one of the main reasons I shifted to Utah, to be closer to nature and hike more regularly.
I want to hang out with Shashank and taste some of his great cooking. I love to cook and kind of a foodie as well. Okay, so take a moment for this next poll, and let's see the results on how you would rank Shashank's English ability in terms of fluency. Do you think he's higher or lower than Juna and Charles? Interesting results. Overall, this is looking like people are scoring his ability lower. But again, significant variability all the way from a 5 to a 10, with a 7 being the top score. Thanks so much. Thanks for humoring us and participating in these polls. It's super interesting to see how we evaluate talent. So here are Shashank's results. True North score of 8.2. So a little bit higher than Charles, and same as Juna, and a CFR score of B2 to C1. One of the benefits of having a testing platform like this, and again, this could apply to language skills, it could apply to software development skills, it could apply to accounting skills, some type of objective assessments to introduce into our hiring practices. It produces really meaningful results. One is that you can get immediate results on the people that you're screening. For example, if you had 100 or 200 or even 1,000 candidates that you needed to screen for in a high volume situation, you could administer the screening test to every candidate simultaneously. And as soon as they finish that test, you have results of those who are qualified to do the skill that you need done. It's so much more efficient than having to phone screen or have them fill out form fills in your interview process, because then a human still has to rate those and you have to tabulate all those results. It's accurate, so you could see the variability in how we ranked the language ability of these 3 candidates. And by comparing their language skills to an AI model that's been trained against millions of results, you get a much more objective and accurate reading of that specific skill that you're looking for. It's affordable. You don't have to, if you can come up with better tests that are AI enabled or that can be done at scale, you don't have to hire additional recruiters or screeners. You can use the tool to reduce your recruiting cost. And we've talked about scalability and confidence and security. The one thing to be mindful of whenever we're looking at AI is the AI is only as good as the data that has trained the model. So as you're looking to introduce assessments or AI supported products into your recruiting process, but that's one of the most important questions you need to ask of these different companies is, what does the data set look like? And has it been verified that it's reliable and produces accurate results? Because you can find plenty of AI out there that doesn't have enough experience to give reliable results yet. Again, if we look at effective hiring as a potential benefit to customers, there's so many things that getting the hiring right does to impact the customers. When you look at this specific problem we're trying to solve of hiring for the right language ability and communication skills, especially if people are in a customer-facing job, that language and communication ability is so critical for customer outcomes. All the time in our world, we hear of customers who are saving revenue, they're saving clients because they've been able to hire with better language proficiency. They're able to retain their clients longer because the customers that these employees are talking to are happier with the results. When you have third-party objectivity, you can leverage that in so many different ways. When you think about Glassdoor surveys, people want to know that the hiring process is objective and not subjective. And having third-party objectivity just gives you the proof to ensure that you're not introducing bias. Language certification proof kind of stands on its own, but improved CSAT is so critical for our customer-facing employees. It's one of the most important outcomes that we can produce. And there's also just an element of having peace of mind that your customers know that you have the right skills on the team to produce the results that they need. In closing, my invitation to everyone on this call is to evaluate all of your talent pathways that you're trying to invest in, but particularly the talent pathway of acquiring talent, and to consider what you are doing currently to test for the skills that you need to hire for. If you don't have rigorous testing, this is an immediate way that you can start to have a bigger impact on the overall company performance. One of the challenges that we have in the people, HR, talent space is that too often we're viewed as a cost center in the business. We're a support organization, and we struggle sometimes to tie the work that we do every day to the overall business and financial outcomes of the organizations that we're a part of. And testing for the right talent to make sure that we get the right people in the right seats is a way that we can make immediate impact. Feel free to use any of the data in this presentation as you're trying to justify purchases or tools to improve the talent that you're bringing into the organization. Feel free to use some of the graphs and the data that I've presented to make your case with executives. The talent that you bring into your organization, as you all know, becomes a key differentiator in the growth of your business. And with the rise of awareness around diversity and inclusion, which I fully support, being able to hire without bias and without prejudice has just become more and more important in the work that we do every day. And so having objective testing skills will help your organization just take that next step into being world-class. So my takeaway and invitation to everyone is to consider how you can test better for the people that you're bringing into the organization. Feel free to reach out to me. I love to engage with colleagues across the HR space on anything related to people and talent. Not just talent acquisition, but if I could be of support to you and of help to you in your work and in the questions that you're trying to answer, it would bring me a lot of joy to connect and get to know you and see if I could be of help. If you're interested in trying the Emmersion assessment, here's a QR code. Feel free to download it. It's an interesting test that you can give. If you're hiring language speakers, people who are speaking English as a second language, or if you have offshore call center employees, this is something that you should look at because it does automate and provide better results in how we test for language skills. And with that, we now have some time for questions and comments. And Joelle, I believe you're moderating this.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you so much, Paul. Such an interesting presentation. We do have a couple of questions. All right, the first one, kind of around one of the other pathways that you mentioned early in the presentation. So employee development. You've spoken a lot about how your tools can be useful in the talent acquisition space. Do you provide some, resources around development?
Yeah, that's such a great question. When you just look in the language space, one of the best ways for someone to get promoted is based on their language skills, especially if they're in a customer-facing role. And so a lot of our customers, what they will do is they'll assess someone's language ability on a regular basis, every 6 months or every year. And as employees develop greater language skills, it creates a very simple pathway to promote them into a higher paying job where they have greater responsibility, where they may be supporting more sensitive clients.
Yeah.
And so we're talking just about language assessment, but apply this to any other type of skill assessment. And if you can determine what tests can validate someone's increased skill or increased ability, it becomes a really objective way to develop your people. Yeah, that's a great question.
Gotcha. Thank you. So it seems that all of this digital transformation, Paul, is about replacing humans. We're talking a lot about objectivity. Is that what the goal here is? And where does subjectivity play in?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And AI is absolutely having an impact in the digital transformation. But the way that we look at AI, our primary purpose is not to replace humans. It's to refocus humans on more value-added tasks and responsibilities. Again, artificial intelligence or skill assessment programs, they should never make a hiring decision for you. They should simply be a data point to inform your hiring decisions. There's so much more that goes into talent acquisition and hiring decisions than just someone's skill. You have to test for fit. You need to test for how they would adopt and live the values of your organization. So where artificial intelligence and this digital transformation is absolutely impacting the work that humans do every day, I think our job as people professionals is to identify the work in our organizations that is less valuable if it's done by a human, and where could we shift the skills and abilities of those people to provide even greater value to our customers. And so that's always how we phrase it as we're as we're sharing our product with our customers. Is don't think about this as a replacement for humans, but as a way to repurpose your people.
Makes sense.
Was there another part to that question, Joelle, that I didn't speak to?
No, I think you covered it. I think you covered it for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
A little more on that. We've got a question regarding ATS systems. So if the process includes loading applicant results into the ATS manually, is that a piece that can or should be automated also?
Yeah, whenever you're looking at assessment tools, whether it's Emmersion or anything else, always look for tools that can integrate directly into the ATS. Again, you're looking to put your people on more value-added tasks, and anything that needs to be done manually should be avoided at all costs. So through Emmersion or almost any other tool that you're going to find out there, hopefully they can build a simple integration into your ATS so that you can, from the single pane that you're working from to evaluate talent, you can then evaluate their language ability or their coding skills or whatever other skill that you're testing for.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for that. All right, another question coming in. What are your thoughts on psychological and or behavioral testing, and how does that factor into all of this?
I've used psychological and behavioral testing. Again, the key with any test that you're looking to introduce into the hiring process is you need to make sure that it's valid and that it's tested, that the data feeding into that test is accurate enough that you can get reliable results. So one of my concerns with earlier stage startup companies is they may not have the data in their model to accurately predict accurately predict results. And so when we chose a behavioral assessment in a past life, we looked for one that had a long track record of reliable results. Again, as we used that test, that behavioral test, we didn't expect it to make our hiring decision. We were testing for specific traits that we had strong evidence to believe led to being a top performer in our company. And so we would administer that test to see if we could isolate those behaviors in the people that we believed would lead to success. We just used it as one more data point in the hiring process. We didn't expect it to make the hiring decision for us.
Of course. Yeah, that's obviously the theme there, that we're not allowing it to make the decision for us. Okay, all right, thank you. Another question about the Emmersion's language assessment. How does accent factor into that?
Yeah, I really should have our head of language assessment talk about that question, because he spent years, studying languages and people's ability to speak language. But the way that our software works is we use a process called elicited imitation. So when you take the assessment, the software will read a sentence to you in the language that's being tested. So for example, today I went to the store and bought some apples. Then the test taker gets the chance to repeat that sentence. And the software then compares your speaking sample to the standard. And it factors in vocabulary, it factors in accent, it factors in just overall speaking ability. And as you go through the adaptive assessment, the sentences get harder and harder, and it really tests your language ability effectively. So accent is worked into that whole comparison between the speaker and the standard.
Understood. Okay. Thank you very much. Such interesting research that's gone into all of that. Kind of on that note, on the note of research, Paul, there's a question regarding the pathways that you discussed initially and how you made the connection to employee results, financial results, and customer results. Can you talk a little bit about how you really make the connection between how something like acquiring the right talent can have a direct impact on a result?
Yeah. You know, what I should do is maybe send a link to you from Norm Smallwood's data. He's the one who conducted the survey, but they looked at multiple measures. You know, they looked at how these 1,700 different companies were acquiring talent, and then they compared that to financial results and customer results and employee results. They looked at the rigor of the talent acquisition process and made some inferences on how they were bringing talent into the organization compared to those companies who didn't have as much rigor around the talent that they were bringing in. And through that lens, they were able to compare the talent acquisition results to financial, customer, and employee results. I'd love to have Norm speak to that more effectively than I did on how they did that.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, Paul, our last question is just about Emmersion as a company. Could you tell us just a little bit more about your mission, your vision as a company?
Yeah, I'll tell you why I came to Emmersion. In my last company, we built a fantastic call center down in Guatemala, and I had the opportunity to travel there several times a year and just become very close to our people there in Guatemala. And one thing I noticed is that as our people landed jobs in call centers where they could demonstrate their skills with language to find a new job, it impacted their lives. You know, we would celebrate when one of our employees bought their first home. We were excited to hear that they were able to offer better health care and better educational opportunities for their family. And it was their language ability that opened up the door to life-changing educational and employment opportunities. And because I saw that firsthand in the lives of my friends in Guatemala, I was deeply attached to the mission of Emmersion, which is essentially to do that. We're trying to close the global communication gap. We're trying to make it easier for people to get life-changing jobs and educational opportunities through their language ability. And so everything that we do is focused on helping our customers invite people into their organizations who are ready to take that next step into life-changing employment opportunities. And so we're very mission driven. Our CEO calls us a for-profit social venture, and it's just a thrill to work in an organization where people are so dedicated to making a difference in people's lives around the world.
Wonderful, wonderful. So good to hear that, Paul. Thanks again for such an interesting presentation. We will transition to closing right now. Oh, actually, sorry, we've got one more question and we do have time, so I'm going to take it. When would these assessments take place in the applicant experience? In the day of quick application processes such as the one-tap apply, how would assessments change or lengthen the process?
Yeah, in the call center space. So think about the areas of your business where you might be hiring in high volume for very competitive talent. Our goal that we try to help our customers reach is same day hire. Okay. So if you can have someone apply, be screened for their abilities, go through the interview process, and have an offer in the same day, you set yourself apart from your competitors. So we encourage people to test top of funnel as high as early in the application process as you can, because then you can leverage that data in which candidates you're going to invest more time in to interview. So that's always our guide, is put it top of funnel so that you can use that data to guide the rest of your efficient interview process.
I'd like to say one more thank you to Paul and to the great people at Immersion. And I'd also, of course, like to thank you, our webcast viewer. Thanks for spending an hour with us, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.